Dear colleagues, welcome to the best practice video for the introductory section of the DigiPass Toolkit. Here with me, there is Professor Stefano Govoni, who is a teacher at the University of Pavia, Guido De Wilde, who is the manager for international student affairs at the University of Amsterdam, and Agata Wadolna, head of the mobility office. I will now let them introduce themselves to the audience. So maybe we can start with Stefano.
Okay, my name is Stefano Govoni, and I was involved in this project by Elena Caldirola, who directs the Didactic Innovation Office at the university. A couple of years ago, at that time, I was the deputy rector for learning and teaching activities. I have participated as a deputy rector to a series of initiatives, including virtual mobility project and education innovation groups with particular attention to the learning spaces. And I was involved in the first application of the EC2U European program.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And Guido, would you like to say something to our colleagues, to the audience?
Hi, everyone. My name is Guido de Wilde, or Guido de Wild, if that's easier. I'm very honored to be working for this DigiPass Top Toolkit Best Practice video. My role is indeed, I'm a manager for the Office of International Student Affairs at the University of Amsterdam. Officially, I'm the manager Global Student Experience and Engagement, which means I'm working together with international universities to create all these global learning opportunities for our students. And I'm also a trainer in intercultural competences and help produce some of the cultural capsules in the DigiPass Student Toolkit. Very honored to be here.
Thank you. And last but not least, and for sure not least for importance, on the opposite, we have Agata. And would you like to present yourself?
Thank you, Marco. Hello, everyone. My name is Agata. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me for this interview. I think it's a great idea to share our experiences. I am working at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow in the International Student Office, and I'm institutional Erasmus Plus coordinator, and I'm mainly responsible for managing outgoing students' mobilities.
So we are here to share your and our experience with our fellow colleagues that will be engaged in these toolkits for improving the experience of students who are going to go mobile. So let's start with the first question that I want to ask you. Why do you think that it is important for students to go mobile? Stefano?
The first thing I'm thinking about is that you go outside of your comfort zone. You are outside of the family, usual friends, your city, your country, your language, and this is very challenging. And this challenge is important in this period of life while you are students, because thereafter life will pose you many challenges, and this period is important to practice on that. In addition to this, more and more employers are looking for the international experiences of the students and are evaluating those. So if you had to choose which one to give a job, you decide the one that has international experience versus those that just stayed home all the period. you increase your independence. Obviously, you are out of the nest, so you must grow in that. And obviously, there are many other advantages. You will meet with people having another culture. You will improve your language skills. You will make more new friends. But what I think is crucial and important, you are starting to build your own international network in that period. That is fundamental.
Okay. And would you like to add something, or Agatha or
No.
Guido?
Okay.
Maybe I can add just one phrase, because Professor Stefano Govani told the essential thing about students and PhD students' mobilities. I think that also important for our student is when they go abroad, they can understand how teaching methods differ from different countries, and they will have a different perspective after this experience of studying abroad. And I think it's really important also for them to see the differences and learn them.
All right.
I agree, Agatha and Stefano. I think we become more and more aware of the fact that we are preparing our students for living and working in a highly diverse intercultural environment. We prepare them for the international global labor market. Chances are that their number of intercultural encounters will increase even more than we do. So this mobility program, it provides the opportunity to really engage with a different educational environment, increase their social network, build intercultural competences, increase your knowledge of intercultural differences, adopting a certain attitude, practicing skills. But what I also see is that in mobility, putting yourself in a different environment, it will help or encourage students to engage with societal issues. How are global challenges seen in a very different environment? Or practice and see how they will look at their future profession. So also international orientation towards their profession, societal issues is, I think, is also a key component.
Yeah, sure. Actually, we know that going mobile, it has always been a very important component of the education of students. And nowadays we see that engaged students in mobility is becoming more and more important, much more important than what was before, because we live in a very internationalized, multicultural dimension of the society. So this is for sure a very important component for students who are studying or they just finished studying. So it is a component that spans from the beginning of their academic career to beyond the academic career of a student. What kind of problems do you think that students face when they decide to go mobile? I mean, well, actually, it was probably difficult before, but nowadays also for other problems that we are now living in, it is probably much more difficult. But I mean, they can face problems that might go just from the orientation phase, so deciding where to go, to much more practical aspects. What do you think that are the problems that a student face when decide to, well, I want to be a mobile student, but I have these problems.
Okay, as before, I
Yeah.
start, and I wanted to add something to the also to the previous topic. You may see from the recording, I'm the oldest in this group. So at my times, there was no internationalization, no going abroad to study, but you had to go abroad to do career at least in the academy, soon after having finished your studies. I was for almost 3 years in United States working, not more studying, but directly working, and that was very important. So it's not something new. It's something that now is more extended and diffused through the students and brought down to the younger ages, and this is really good. Okay, this was something to add. What are the problems? At the beginning, bureaucracy, for example, at least in Italy, but I can imagine also in other countries. The other one is loneliness. For the first time, you are somewhere without reference point. At the beginning, this can be not easy to manage. You may have language difficulties if not in your technical language, but in the daily life. But that is more easy to deal with. I think that for all these problems, the pre-mobility training done by the internationalization offices can help very lot with recording out of experience, contact with peers, facilitation of the contacts with your peers. Because if you go there prepared, it will be much easier to deal with all this stuff.
Right.
May I?
Yeah.
Because I would like to echo what Stefano is saying, is that I fully agree. I was involved in development with all our other cultures in the DigiPass family on building capsules for culture awareness, culture shock, dealing with reverse culture shock. And it seems logical when you put a student in a culturally different environment, you encounter upon issues like, how do I deal with diversity situations and diverse environments? What is the mechanism of inclusion and exclusion? And just it seems so logical, that the fun part about culture, and I think many students will say so, is, oh, I want to meet other cultures, without realizing that meeting other cultures, if you do it correctly, is highly uncomfortable, because it will also help you with exclusion if it's not done right. So developing students very early on, developing the cultural lens so they can actually see and be aware of cultural differences, and then teaching them the mechanism of how does inclusion work, what you should do, what could you do in order to adapt to another culture, or to talk about your own differences, and to become aware of that. I think that helps, and that also helps them in dealing with that loneliness.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I fully agree with two of you. What can I add? In my everyday work, I work amid students who are going abroad or who are coming back from some few months during exchange. I can say that for sure, loneliness and homesickness are the first main problems they face at the beginning of their experience. Of course, the cultural shock and the aspect of learning and living in the environment of the new language, because it often happens that students speak and they know English, for example, because most of our students usually choose to study in English, and they speak this language, they know it very well, but when they go to classes and try to make notes or exams in the foreign language, it becomes a problem sometimes for them because it's something new. So they also should learn this. Of course, many students, but I think this is normal. They say that the biggest problem and stress making problem for them is find accommodation. For sure, it's not easy when you are in another country and you should find a good apartment or a room in foreign country, not knowing anyone there. So I think it's really important for students to make a social network before going abroad. Nowadays, we have possibilities. With social network, internet, we can meet already students studying there in the place where we are going. So we can make those networks before going. And I think it will be really helpful. And what can I say? Nowadays, in this year and last year, I think it was extremely difficult to go abroad. Last year, it was almost impossible. And now students are going abroad, they decide to go. And I think it's really stressful for them. There are new stresses because they don't know how the situation will change. If they will be, if it will be possible to live normally in the country when whole Europe is in lockdown nowadays. So I'm really proud of the students who decide to nevertheless go abroad and try to live this experience.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and well, what do you think that is the role of the mobility office in helping students facing these problems? How can a mobility office of a university help students who are going to go abroad, so outside, or incoming students that, on the other hand, are going to come to your university to study?
Okay, I can answer that obviously organizing pre-mobility training program for people living out and organizing welcome packages also available online and in advance for people incoming. This is very important, but I want to add something more uh, personal linked to my experience as a deputy to the teaching and learning activities. At that time, I was working really side by side with Ilaria Poggiolini, Professor Ilaria Poggiolini. She was the deputy director for the internationalization office. And I think that there should be also a more strict cooperation between the various governance sectors at the university, because making, for example, harmonizing the rules for credit recognition of wagons, I mean, that is important. And if you do not join the different expertise, internationalization, Ilaria Poggiolini, teaching, myself, is that it will be extremely difficult. They will stay separate. So I guess that a work can be done on that. Besides that, the officer does extraordinary work and can do an extraordinary work for providing packages for outgoing and ingoing people.
Yeah, so support to students ranging from a tightening of the interaction between the several offices and part of the university, but also with students providing more detailed information or packages of information
Yeah,
on.
I mean, the EC2U program, for example, was starting to think what can be pre-programmed as a kind of automatic recognition. I think that as international office, sometimes you do have problem, and I should ask to that professor, to the other one, what he or she will recognize about this is the wrong way. It should be at governance level, the recognition. But this is my personal view, okay?
What do you think, Agatha?
Well, I think the main role of international offices is helping students with all paperwork. As Stefano said before, one of the main problems is bureaucracy. So we are the persons, I mean people working in the international offices, that can help students in this work, so that we can make the formalities easier for the students. And what's more, in the receiving institution, I think the mobility office might help students in organizing their lives upon arrival. So I think organizing welcome weeks is a great help for students to integrate, to introduce those formalities that we said before, and whole structure of the university. I think it might be very helpful for the first days or weeks for staying abroad.
Ido?
I think I've been working for an international office for, I think, 16 years now. And I think what excites me most in my line of work is that I play a supporting role in creating these opportunities for our students. And I think, and what I also really like is that I've seen that diversity of the portfolio grow as well. It used to be very much focused on study mobility and exchange programs. But you see this diversity growing in terms of internship mobility and research mobility and virtual mobility and even student competitions in the virtual realm. So our portfolio is really increasing in a number of opportunities. So you can really target a large audience of different students. I don't think you would cut it nowadays if you just offer a semester exchange program. I think a lot of mobility students can only partake in a short term abroad or a virtual program. So I think our goal is to really help create those opportunities and then make the connection. Like Agatha said, there's a lot of paperwork going on. So you need to initially play a strong role in making the connections, allowing people to transition from one environment to the other. But at some point, we have to let them go. So as an international office, I think it's also our task to help them become resilient, bounce back from how do I respond into a situation that the partner says no, or that the paperwork doesn't fall through, or the visa is not taken care of, because they need to be able to take care of some of these situations themselves. And of course, we keep them safe in this challenging time. And at the end, I think we can help them with the translation of the entire mobility experience. How does it translate to employability? How can I get academic recognition, like Stefano said? So I think all throughout that journey, before, during, and after, the international office can play a supporting role.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
So, yeah, sure.
I made something, and as we were speaking, there is another aspect. As the number of international students is increasing, and their diversity also, they are coming from different countries. I think that a work that can be done by internationalization offices is try not only to integrate these people within the hosting country, but try to make interaction between international students from different countries. Because sometimes I'm thinking also to some situation in Pavia, or to my situation when I was in the United States, they try to stick together. Just I am from Italy, I will stay with the Italians, and why I should mix with the other international students to make my experience really full. So that is a topic in which the internationalization offices can help really a lot, because they have the complete view.
Yeah, and sometimes well, just sometimes, and not all university, forget that we have also some students associations that are made by mobile students or ex-mobile students that can for sure help in supporting and engaging new mobile students or wannabe mobile students. So we for sure have to find a way to try to get the support from these students university from these students associations in order to obtain a more tight interaction with the mobility office or the international offices at the university. Well, starting from this consideration, I have, for instance, a question for Guido. How universities can engage students in supporting the mobility or mobility offices, for instance. You once told me that actually you try to obtain as much as support as much more support that is possible for the mobility office through interaction with students. So can you just give us your example in this?
Yes, of course. Thanks for allowing me space to tell about this. I like this topic quite a lot. I feel very passionate that we can put students at the heart of everything we do in the international office and even at the institutional level. Working with mobility students, you see a lot of passion, especially students who return, but also the students who arrive just on their campus. They overflow in energy. They are incredibly enthusiastic about the experience. And I think providing them an opportunity to channel some of that energy into some of the work that you do as an international office can be very helpful. I think when I talk to anyone working in international offices, and this includes student counselors and career advisors, everybody is limited in time. We have a high level of commitment, and we don't have enough working hours to be committed to the work. So there's a lot of projects where we need help, and in some of these projects we need user generated content, students who actually help us out in providing images, providing testimonials, but also providing feedback. All of our brochures are critiqued by our student ambassador program. So whenever we're producing a magazine or a brochure or a website, students give their say of what speaks to them and what doesn't. But also in terms of policy making, I think for an institutional, on an institutional level, I think it would be incredibly powerful to sit down with your students and ask them, what do you think of this mobility portfolio? What do you think about the destinations? So really include them in the conversation. And the most tricky part here is building trust amongst academic and professional staff to work with students and to allow them their space in the work that we do. Because in many cases, when we work with students, people say, can they do the work? Can you trust their voice? Can you, if you allow them access and full responsibility of the social media challenges, will they not make mistakes? And the one thing that we do with our ambassador students, we have a prize-winning program called the UVA Global Exchange Ambassadors, is that we train them. We train them in the line of work that they do. We train them in intercultural competences or cultural intelligence. We train them in social media. We train them in all kinds of communication, but also presenting, public speaking, networking, deep democracy, decision making. So when we find a job for them to do, we first train them, and then we allow them a lot of responsibilities in taking on that responsibility. And the output was always amazing, because much of the output that we're working on has to speak to other students. So user-generated content really works if you give them a role in this.
Yeah, and this probably also helps students to feel an active part of the university and not just users of the university. So probably they will feel more engaged in all the aspect of the organization and governance, probably also of the university. That's really a wonderful way to interact with them, I think. Thank you.
What I liked about Stefano says a loneliness, which is at the heart of some of our issues that we do, creating a sense of belonging at the institution.
That is important.
What we sometimes say is we just approach our ambassadors and say, we have an issue, and we don't know the solution. The problem here is loneliness. How do you create a sense of belonging? And what should we do as an institution? And then they form all kinds of solutions. We have now not part of the ambassadors program, but an inclusivity committee of a study association within psychology, sole focus working on inclusion within the department. So it doesn't matter which group of students you work with. ESN might be one, or you create your own ambassador group, or a study association, or a student council. We as an international office or the university, we can train them and ask them and be honest and say, well, this is some of the problems that we have. What do you think would be a workable solution for this? And you'll be amazed by the output.
I have a question dedicated to Stefano, and as mentioned before, our times are very particular and a bit difficult because due to the pandemic, universities had to learn to cope with the crisis. So, Stefano, what do you think that will be a good approach to crisis management for universities? What it is important in order to cope with not just, for instance, the pandemic that is our problem of this year, the 2020, 2021, but all types of crises that we can.
Yeah, as you said, pandemics will end. Because of the intervention, because of the vaccines, and so on. So the point is what we learned from the pandemics. And I must say that universities were really quick to react with protocols apt to deal with the student presence, students, respect of the distances, blended teaching, at distance servicing. So university gave a good response. What I think is still lacking is just the general idea of crisis management. So can be a pandemic, can be some natural events, terrorism, whatever. The question is, are universities prepared to face any new crisis? What are the protocols for information of all the academic bodies and all the persons, including the international students, not only through outreach them as information, but to manage their destiny within while dealing with a very serious crisis. I know I learned actually from some people of the Internationalization Office that there are programs like UNICEF in Europe that are trying to develop this. They're not really or just devoted to the crisis management. They are, for most part, devoted to the safety management, which is more regular day by day. They do lack how can be organized the governance of the crisis. and then from there through the various offices. This part, I guess, is still lacking. I do not know the experience of the other university. I do not know whether Guido in Amsterdam they do have protocols or offices devoted not just safety but crisis management.
And how do you cope with the crisis, for instance, in Amsterdam?
We have a separate body in the University of Amsterdam that really targets risk assessment and crisis control. But I do recognize here that when dealing in a crisis, there are so many different departments involved that you need to fire up and start focusing on the issue at hand and build solution. Um, what I what I really liked about the University of Amsterdam is that, for instance, in the current crisis, when you have to make tough decisions, is that you have to mobilize the entire university to formulate one answer that is incredibly difficult to do. And should you continue or stop mobility? And it is incredibly difficult answer, of course, to give because you're wrecking dreams. And basically, when you think about the students and how much time and effort they put into this, they've got their whole hope set out on this adventure, and then you as an institution have to step in and look: is it safe? What is the academic value of the journey you're taking on? Is it actually feasible to do from a supportive perspective, academic perspective? So I think, and each crisis is different. Each crisis, you will learn something different. Other parties in the universities have to play a role. But I do think that dealing in all these different crises make a university more resilient and increase our ability to bounce back from these types of situations. And sometimes even opportunity. Right now, virtual mobility has never been so popular because of this situation. So also recognizing the opportunity in a situation of a crisis is something that you can do.
I personally do think that virtual mobility will stay from this experience because it will expand your experience in the time. It will allow a follow up of the experience, and this will be true no matter of the pandemic, but just is a new value that we are recognizing.
Yeah. And speaking about virtual mobility or blended learning, what can you, this is something that you previously mentioned, Agatha. So what can you tell us about this?
For sure, COVID-19 pandemic situation has introduced those new forms of mobility, such as mixed or remote mobility. And I think we all are already tired of staying at home and working only in front of our computers. And I know that also our students are tired of that. But I see many students that decide to take part in virtual mobility from home, taking part in classes offered by another university in another country. And I think it has its positive sides, as people who previously could not afford to go abroad due to, I don't know, financial reasons or fear of going and living abroad. Now they can participate in mobility, gain new experience, meet new cultures as well, different teaching methods. So the virtual mobility now can be integrated into students' curriculum. We can see it in this academic year and also in the last academic year, that it is the part of the curriculum. So it's it's their experience, and also I think it can be an incentive to leave at a later, more convenient time. So also by virtual mobility, students can get that network of international experience. So I'm totally agree with Stefano that it will stay with us, and also if and I hope soon we will be able to travel without any restrictions and fears. I think the virtual mobility will stay, and I think it would be a great idea if it will be an integral part of each student's curriculum.
Yeah, right. Okay. Do you want to add something? Because otherwise, I have a last question for each one of you. Actually, a general question. That is, if you had the chance to give just one suggestion to a student who want to go abroad, what is this only possible suggestion that you would like to give to a student in order to engage it to go abroad?
Do I start as before? I would say him or her just do as many contacts as you can and really start to build your own international network and follow up it with all the social like LinkedIn and so on. And when you are go back at home, keep in contact with the international office, tell him your experience, and so this is the starting building block, and these are is made by connections with people.
Guido?
Well, there's so many things you would like to say to students, of course. But what springs to mind is that the University of Amsterdam is part of a network called U21, Universities 21, and they did a large research about the power of reflection. And I think that would be my main message to students, that when you embark or you're thinking and considering embarking on a student mobility program, actively choose your learning goals. What do you want to take away from the experience? And choose this before you go. Actively do that. And along your journey, reflect on this learning goal. Like, what have you done in order to achieve the goal? Where do you see yourself now if you would evaluate yourself? What can you actively do to increase that learning goal? It can be anything. There's so many things you can take away from the experience, but I think the power of reflection really helps in achieving your goals.
Agatha?
I think I would say simply not to hesitate and just go, because of course there will be some problems, but there are much more positive aspects of mobility. If we not try, we will never know. So just go, just try.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to ask you this question because although it is directed to students, an hypothetical students who are going to give this this suggestion, it is in fact coming from your experience with students who went abroad or are going abroad. So it is a general suggestion, in my opinion, that anyone who is working in a mobility office can give to students that are going to mobile. So I thought that was important to provide your own experience also to the audience of this this short video. So thank you for participating to this interview. And I hope that this very short interview will be helpful for our fellow mobility officers at the universities that will be engaged with this student toolkit, and that will have to try to give as much expression as possible and to students who are going to go mobile. So thank you all for participating.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very
you.
much.